Hey everybody, Dirili here. Today we're finally starting Hakuouki Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. I've been meaning to play this pretty much since I started my channel. Well, actually, years even before I thought about starting a channel. But, games kept popping up, so I kept inserting them instead. So before I start, I want to give a teensy bit of info here. The version that I'm playing now is on Vita. I own the PSP version as well, but I prefer recording on Vita, so I purchased it a second time to play it on here. Same for Sweet Fuse when I get to that. I'm going to be playing this at the same time as the about-to-be-released game, The Amazing Shinsengumi Heroes in Love. The two games share 4 characters, so I'm going to pick a character, read that person's route in Hakuouki, and then read that character's route in The Amazing Shinsengumi. Then, the characters that the games don't share will be the last ones that I read, which works out well for Hakuouki since Hijikata and Kazuma are the ones that they don't share, and those are best saved for last anyway, I think. The Amazing Shinsengumi has Shinpachi, which I really wish was available in Hakuouki, along with Sanan, because I really love those two guys, but oh well, I can deal with that. I hear they're available in later sequels to the game, but I can only dream that they'll get those translated later on, because there's nothing on the horizon about those except for maybe Hakuouki Sweet School Life, which is a modern-day adaptation with the same characters, but yeah, that has nothing to do with the old-fashioned ones that I love so much. And if you don't know already, there are 3 anime seasons and 2 movies based off the games, which are really wonderful, so I highly recommend them to you if you haven't watched them already. And there's also a series of chibi comedy shorts that's been airing this year, but I haven't been watching it myself since I don't usually care for chibi stuff. And if you enjoy stories about the Shinsengumi, then I also recommend Peacemaker Kodagane. I need to go back and watch that again, as I saw it a very long time ago, and the only characters that I can really clearly remember are Soji and Hijikata. In contrast with Hakuouki, Soji was more soft-spoken and gentle there, as opposed to the more cocky version of him here in Hakuouki, and Hijikata is more stern in Peacemaker than he is in Hakuouki. Speaking of which, as you can see in this historical picture of him here, he was actually pretty good-looking in real life too, at least in my opinion and several of my friends. So yeah, I'm curious to see how the guys are portrayed in the new game. I can't believe they didn't put Hijikata in it, though. How can you have a Shinsengumi game and not have Hijikata? It makes no sense to me. Oh yeah, also be aware that there's going to be a lot of sadness in this game. It's not a lighthearted little romantic romp. I'm wondering if the Amazing Shinsengumi is going to be any happier or not. Anyway, enough of all that. Let's finally start reading the game. Hakuouki Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. Let's begin. They did not integrate the touchscreen for this, so you'll hear me clicking buttons, unfortunately. I'm keeping her name Chizuru because, well, you know, I watched the animes and everything, so I'm already kind of attached to her as Chizuru. Prologue. January 1864. So, this is Kyoto. It was awfully impressive. There was no denying it. Even the simple hellos between people passing in the street seemed warm and friendly. They nodded and smiled to one another, almost as if they were family, not strangers about on errands. Still, there was something else as well, something that made the city feel strangely cold, almost as though there was a great invisible wall shutting out anyone who wandered in from the country, which I guess is me. It wasn't particularly comfortable, I had to admit. No, that's all in my head. I had walked quite some distance to reach Kyoto, and it occurred to me that my mind and body were both very tired. Even so, tiredness was no reason for me to stand about feeling sorry for myself. I couldn't afford to, after all. Excuse me. With new, albeit forced resolve, I tried to stop a passerby. I'm sorry, but I seem to be a bit lost. Could you... I guess they ignored me. What am I supposed to do now? Try asking more than one person, maybe? I was lost again, but in a different sort of way. I sighed and found myself looking up at the darkening sky. The sun was beginning to set. The people I'd spoken to hadn't been unkind, and they'd given me directions I needed, but couldn't he have chosen a better time to leave the city? Apart from my father, there was only one other person in the city who I could rely on, Dr. Matsumoto. But Dr. Matsumoto was a doctor in service to the shogunate. I had never trusted him myself, but my father put a great deal of trust in the man. He had told me that if I should run into any trouble during his absence, I was to contact Dr. Matsumoto. Unfortunately, Dr. Matsumoto was apparently out of town on business and would not return for some time. Was I too hasty? Perhaps I should have waited. True, it is rather rude to visit unannounced, which was why I had sent a letter ahead of me. Of course, if he'd been gone for a very long time, then he had almost certainly not read my letter. Perhaps, I thought, I should have waited for a reply before traveling alone to a city I'd never even seen. But, no, I knew I could not have waited any longer. Why? What happened?
Chizuru.
Is something wrong, Father? He paused a moment and looked at me.
It seems I must go to the city of Kyoto for a time.
Work again? He had been leaving the house often then, sometimes for days at a time. How long will you be gone?
I'm afraid I can't say. A month, perhaps, maybe 2.
Oh. There was no hiding my disappointment. Nonetheless, I wasn't a child anymore. I couldn't beg him not to go, or some other foolishness. Yes, I'd be lonely, but I was much more worried for him. Please, Father, be careful. They say that the city of Kyoto is dangerous. He only smiled and nodded.
You needn't fret. I will be sure to send you letters as often as I am able, so that you'll have no need to worry.
Okay, you promise? Father kept his promise. A new letter arrived every day, and I scarcely had time to respond before another would arrive. He told me that he worried about me home all by myself. Then the letter stopped. A whole month passed with no word from my father, and I began to worry. Father, they say Kyoto is full of Ronin. It is not a safe place. Usually a samurai is paid by their house, but Ronin with no house to report to often rob people in order to make ends meet. They are nothing more than violent criminals who hide behind the image of the samurai. Such is the state of the city of Kyoto, the city of Ronin. Small wonder, then, that I worried for my father's safety. My mind would concoct horrible possibilities, and I inevitably found myself depressed and tense. First, I suppose I need to find a place to stay. Yeah, this time of night it's already dark. Lost in thought, I hadn't noticed that night had already fallen. If I was honest with myself, I hadn't the first idea how long it might take to find my father. I'd taken some money with me, but it wasn't much. Enough to last me a month, I hoped, if I used it wisely. If I could find Father in that time, so much the better. If not, hopefully Dr. Matsumoto would return before my funds ran out. Should I be unable to find either of them, then it would seem I would be forced to return home. Well, at any rate, I should try and be as frugal as possible. And so I lengthened my stride and set off down the street. Fortunately for me, men's clothing was much more conducive to such a place than my usual dress would have been. Conducive, sorry. I decided early on that Kyoto was far too dangerous for a girl from the country to explore alone, and that it would be wise for me to dress as a man, or at least a boy. My disguise, such as it was, had proven successful, and I'd made it all the way to Kyoto unmolested. Perhaps that success had gone to my head. Let me think a girl dressed as a boy could explore Kyoto as she pleased. But Kyoto was not a safe place. I should have remembered that. Instead, I had somehow convinced myself that whatever dangers the city hid didn't apply to me. That's dangerous even for men.
Hey, kid.
I was about to discover otherwise. I spun around. In the street in front of me were 3 men, Ronin. Can I help you? I did my best to keep my voice calm as I reached in what I felt was a nonchalant way for my kodachi. My father had made me take lessons in self-defense. I'd kept with them and actually done rather well. My skill was enough to defend against most attacks. Then again, perhaps it was my confidence in my skill that had put me in the situation in the first place. I'd messed up and let my guard down. My fault. There was a chance I could take them on and win, but there were 3 of them, and 1 of me.
Pretty nice blade you got there, kid.
Only then did I realize they were far more interested in my sword than they were in me.
Looks like a bit of a pup like this one, am I right? Give it here, okay? We'll use it to defend our country.
This is... The sword wasn't just some blade I picked up. It had been passed down through my family for generations. There was no way I could give it to the Ronin. Unfortunately, I had a feeling they wouldn't understand. Yeah. In such a situation, the best decision was undoubtedly... Run? To retreat! Run! So I turned and ran as fast as my legs would carry me.
Hey, get back here, you little bastard!
No! Gosh, they sure don't give up easy, do they? I felt like I'd run for quite a while, but I could still hear the Ronin behind me cursing loudly. I ducked into an alley and flattened myself against the wall. After deciding they weren't too close, I crept further into the alley. Someone had left a couple sheets of wood leaning against one of the houses. It was a perfect spot to hide. With luck, I thought as I knelt down to shuffle under them, this will get me out of this mess. If you're lucky, am I lucky? Huh? Something was wrong. I'd expected to hear the Ronin yelling to each other, looking for me, but... Seconds turned into minutes, and I heard nothing. I was about to sneak out and look when... No, just stay put! Don't wander out. They began to scream. What? My plan to investigate was immediately halted. Yeah, hide. Remaining silent and hidden was clearly more important. Good girl. Still.
Damn you! What is this? Why won't you die? Damn it, we gotta get out of here.
It was then that true fear began to set in. There was something out there. Something very, very dangerous. Something quite possibly lethal. Oh, what makes you think that? The possibilities were... Well, my imagination conjured up no shortage of gruesome theories. Even so, I could feel the itch of curiosity. No, curiosity killed the cat, Chizuru. Don't do it. I wanted to know what was out there. You just can't avoid it in games, can you? Slowly, carefully, I edged up to the corner and looked out. Cold moonlight glared back at me from the bare blade of a drawn sword. My eyes followed the blade up to the arm that held it, clad in a coat of light blue. Had this person saved me? But no sooner had it appeared, that hope was dashed.
Help!
I could hear the Ronin beg for his life as he stumbled back. The person in the blue coat said nothing, just stepped forward, his sword raised.
Oh!
A high, screeching laugh cut through the man's scream. The blade fell through the air, more like a butcher's cleaver than a sword. No technique, no skill, just death. The screen turned suddenly wet, caught, and disappeared like air leaving a half-empty bellows. My eyes went wide. I had just watched a murder. Whatever strength adrenaline had given me was suddenly gone. My legs gave way and I crumpled to the ground. My eyes had gone so wide, I thought they might never close. The Ronin had died with the first blow, but as I watched, the blades kept falling, carving deep lines into the corpse. The soft slip of a blade through flesh, the crack as it struck bone, the silent creep of blood across the ground. I felt nothing from that but madness. Their only desire was raw animal violence. Whatever they were, it wasn't human. They were broken. I could feel my throat closing up. I couldn't breathe. A warm, dark smell brushed against my face. How does a smell brush against your face? It took me a moment to recognize the coppery tang of blood, and the icy bolt of fear ran down my spine, crawling its way into my limbs and freezing me in place. I was terrified. What was I going to do? What could I do? You have to run, Chizuru. I forced my jaw open and drew a ragged breath. This was the only chance I'd get. I had to. But my body, still numb with fear, was less than responsive. I lurched sideways into the wood stacked along the building. With a rough clatter, it collapsed. The creatures turned, their blue coats drenched in blood. Hideous grins split their inhuman faces, and they shook with animal excitement at finding fresh prey to slaughter. That's not a happy party. I had to run. I couldn't die yet. But my legs refused to move. The hideous cackling laughter began again. I was going to die. My body was frozen with terror. I couldn't even scream. This was it. This was the end. Not yet. What? I watched them raise their bloody swords, the moon glinting off the metal. Then there was a flash of light and the soft splash of blood. I could feel it, warm and sticky. Ew! Bile began to rise in my throat, but before disgust took hold, I heard a voice.
Really?
The word suggested disappointment, but the voice sounded happy.
And here I was planning to take care of them all on my own. Couldn't you have picked a better day to work so fast, Saito?
As he spoke, the strange man smiled, almost as if he were enjoying himself. I only did my job. Unlike you, I take no pleasure in battle.
Well, that's not a very nice thing to say.
He laughed. You don't even bother to deny it. The man called Saito sighed with the air of a long-suffering companion and looked over at me.
Maybe, but if you just sat back and let them kill her, you could have saved us some trouble.
His tone was light, but his words confirmed my fears. I had left the frying pan, yes, but I was now in the fire.
Perhaps, but the decision is not ours to make.
Huh? Then, there was someone in charge of these two? Their conversation seemed to suggest that they were part of an organization of some sort. As I thought about it, I remembered hearing stories of a group of men with blue coats. My thoughts were interrupted by a dark shape sliding into view. Hijikata-san! That's... My sister and I, after we watched the anime, we randomly were yelling, Hijikata-san! All the time. Well, actually, that was after Peacemaker Korogane, because they yelled his name a lot for some reason. I swallowed hard. The moonlight shone off his smooth, dark hair. For reasons I couldn't fathom, in that moment, the light on his hair made me think of fluttery flower petals. Almost as if cherry trees were blooming out of season.
Luck is not your friend tonight.
His voice was cold and quiet, like a blade of ice. Blue, white moonlight lit his slender face and shone from the blade he held pointed at my chest. But it wasn't the sword that made my breath catch in my throat. It was his eyes. They were fierce and hard, but somewhere behind them I could catch a glimpse of something else. There could be no doubt that he was prepared to kill me, and yet he looked troubled. Not kindness, but perhaps mercy?
Run and I will kill you. Do you understand?
I nodded. There was no doubt he'd meant every word he said. He stared at me for a moment, then grimaced, and with a sigh put his sword away. What? I was too surprised to stop myself from speaking, and it quickly became apparent I wasn't the only one.
What? Hey, Hijikata, are you sure about this? This kid, well, saw everything. That can't be good.
As he spoke to the man he called Hijikata, his eyes narrowed. The man called Hijikata frowned back at him.
Shut up. If you keep that up, you know what we're going to have to do.
I wasn't quite sure what they meant, but it was clear enough that what I'd seen was something they wanted to keep hidden. Still, the more they said, the more I understood, despite the fact that none of us wanted such a thing.
I really think it's going to come back to bite us in the ass if we let this kid go.
The way he looked at me made me feel as if he'd read my mind. Perhaps it would be best if I didn't think too hard about things I wasn't supposed to think about.
So, we should just kill people so they don't bother us later? No, I'll decide what we're going to do with this kid when we get back. I agree with the commander. If we remain here, we are likely to be seen again.
The man they called Saito spoke with quiet confidence. He glanced around, possibly looking for other witnesses. Then he looked down at the creature he'd killed, almost as though he'd forgotten the whole ordeal.
If they had this sort of reaction to blood, then they don't seem like they'll be very practical. Damn, I didn't think they'd gotten this bad.
He peered down at the corpse, his face an emotionless mask. He then looked back up at his companions. However, his eyes narrowed.
As for you two, Drop the Hijikata and commander stuff. We're supposed to be keeping a low profile.
Well, I don't think the outfits help. They pretty much identify you guys.
What? Come on, you can't be serious. You don't think our blues are a bit of a giveaway already?
Yeah, that's what I said. We're on the same wavelength here. He was right. Even I had heard stories about a gang of cruel men in blue coats who cut people down in the streets. But... No, don't think. Ignore them. I did my best to be stern with myself, but it came out more pleading than commanding. My mind swirled with thoughts and worries. I was being drawn into their world. A world where there is nothing strange in carrying on a normal conversation in the dead of night with corpses for company.
What shall we do with the bodies, then? There don't seem to be any physical signs, but...
Hijikata thought for a moment before he spoke.
Just take their blues. Yamazaki can deal with the rest. As you wish. Another man cut down in the street, huh? Doing a great job, aren't we?
He gave a derisive bark of laughter.
So long as we keep our mouths shut, I don't think anyone will connect us with this.
Oh, he's actually smiling. He looked directly at me when he spoke, and I got the distinct feeling that his words weren't for his companions. It was common for people to be murdered in Kyoto. It was a dangerous city, after all. I knew that, of course. But to see it happen, that was something else entirely. If death was such an easy thing in Kyoto, I thought, then the city itself must surely be mad.
Ah, yes. We did save you, didn't we? Aren't you going to thank us?
Huh? I didn't realize immediately that he was speaking to me. When I did, my eyes went wide. What do you mean, saved me? Well, he did have a point. Despite their threats, they had saved my life. I get to live on for a little while longer. I stood up as steadily as I could manage, brushed some of the dirt off my clothes, and bowed. Thank you very much. I apologize for not thanking you earlier. There was so much going on. I was a little confused. I glanced up at them tentatively. The man called Saito was showing some confusion of his own. His eyes were wide, and he had an expression I couldn't place. Hijikata looked as though he'd taken a bite of something sour. Awkward. I know it seems weird to say that, but he told me I should say thanks, so I looked up. Saito and Hijikata were both looking pointedly at anything but me, and the third man was shaking with laughter.
Oh, man. Well, my apologies. I certainly did tell you to, didn't I?
He broke out in laughter again, so much so that he was forced to wipe a few tears away from his eyes as he straightened up.
Well, you're welcome. I'm Soji Okita. Nice to meet a kid who knows how to be polite.
Thank you for helping me. Not quite sure what else to do, I bowed again.
What the hell do you think you're doing, Okita? Commander, I understand your concerns, but we must move.
Whatever mirth I might have inspired gone, the man called Saito spoke with quiet urgency. Hijikata nodded. The man who had called himself Okita grabbed hold of my wrist, gave me a smile, and began to lead me down the street. The grip was a touch too light to be friendly, his fingers like iron cables around my arm. There was no question about my situation. Help! Somebody help! Never let them take you to the second location. If I ran, I would die. Quickly at least, but still. Even if I did as I was told, my life was in the hand of these strange men. I set my jaw and stood up as straight as I could. My eyes met those of Saito as he looked up from the blood-stained coat.
It would be best if you prepared for the worst. I doubt this will end well for you.
Oh, thanks for the encouraging words. His words were like a dagger to my stomach. What was going to happen to me? Was I going to die? As we walked through the cold Kyoto night, I felt horror begin to crawl its way into my spine once again. The cause of my horror wasn't the gruesome end that almost certainly awaited me, but something else entirely. I'd spoken with these men and watched them speak to one another, not feet from a still warm corpse soaked in blood. That I had done such a thing terrified me in an altogether different way. Perhaps I thought, this is what it was like to go mad. Chapter 1. Okay, and we're going to stop there for the first video. We will start Chapter 1 in the next episode. And I believe that you start getting choices pretty much right away. Well, January 1864. I believe we would start getting choices right away in the first video, so if it takes a while to get the first choice, then it'll be a second video along the main path. But other than that, that will be the start of our first character. We'll see when that pops up. So join me for the next episode to see what exactly our plans are going to be. Hope to see you there or in some of my other ones. And I'd be so grateful for any likes, comments, subscriptions, or shares with your friends to show some support. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all health, happiness, and safety. Dirili signing out. Bye-bye, everybody.